Hi, everyone. This is Bill from Field Trial Central, and tonight we're at Field Trial Central Live. Uh, Joining us tonight, we've got a couple great guests. We got Jim Tande, and we've got Cal Martin, Jim's grandson. We'll get to hear from everybody tonight. I'm going to first of all just kind of like to mention, like I always do, that this is being streamed live on Facebook and also on YouTube. It will be saved there for all time, so feel free to share this to everybody you know, bird dog friends, potential field trialers, hunters, guys, people that are just interested in the outdoors. Let's get the word out there. We've been doing these over the last couple months. They've been pretty well received. It's been a lot of fun. We've learned a lot. Tonight's going to be particularly fun for me. Jim's had a huge impact on my field trial career and was around a lot when I first got started. And Jim's been instrumental in several different aspects of field trialing throughout the country, and we're lucky to have him. So, Jim, it looks like your microphone is muted right now. Just maybe you want to click on that real quick. Oh, I can do it myself. I got it. I unmuted it. You're good. So, Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, introduce us to your partner there.
My partner, my buddy. This is my grandson, Cal. He loves to help out. He's a fisherman, rides a horse, pretty good shot. And part of the reason I wanted him on here was to encourage more kids to get involved.
Yeah, well, that's a great reason. Cal, tell us a little bit about yourself. How old are you?
I'm 13. I just turned 13 in April. I live in the St. Cloud Sartell area, and I was just born to hunt and fish.
Well, that makes a lot of sense where you came from. So you were telling me earlier you get done with school and then you go and you spend the rest of the day fishing or working with and playing with your with your dogs. Tell us about your dogs a little bit.
I have a 1-year-old setter puppy named Minnie, and a black lab named Zeke. And Zeke's 5, and he's a very good pheasant hunting dog.
Oh, perfect. What's your favorite kind of hunting at this point in life?
Say that again.
What's your favorite kind of hunting? What do you like to hunt the most?
Pheasants.
Deer hunting or pheasants, yeah.
Super. Well, that's great. And you've been around field trials since you were just a tiny little tot. I know that. Have you hope to do more of that?
Yeah. I really think that a lot more people should do field trialing. I don't really feel like people know how much fun it can actually be, and just going to watch and learn can also be really fun. But ever since I got on the horse, I've never stopped wanting to ride. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's kind of been a theme that I share most weeks is, we have everything that people want, right? Whether you're young or middle-aged or older, we've got outdoors, we've got dogs, we've got birds, we've got guns, we have horses, kind of have everything that we all want to go do. So I think you're exactly right, Cal. It's a thing that we need to get more and more people involved in all the time, and it's great to see you having an interest in it.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, we're gonna reach back a few decades.
Quite a few.
Tell us about your first experience, with field trials. How you got started with field trials. How you got started that direction.
Well, when I was a kid in Fairmont, Minnesota, southwestern Minnesota. I pheasant hunted and duck hunted, had labs, and coon dogs, and loved all that stuff. And I went to college, and guy said there's a bird dog field trial coming up. I went there, and and this combines all my interests in competition and the dogs and the birds. So I played on a college baseball team, and I quit that. Said I'm going to a bird dog field trial, and I don't want to play baseball anymore. So then we moved to Lower Michigan and bought a setter puppy from Bill Pekenbrock in Dubuque, Iowa. Lost you, Billy?
You're still there. I got you.
Okay. Anyway, we went out there and went over to Gladwin, and that would have been 69, I'm sorry, and asked what they were doing at the field trial, and they said that Luther Smith, who's in the Hall of Fame, had a dog named Grouse Bounce that they wanted to call back and see if it could beat young Frucci's dog, Ghost Train. So I watched Luther run the dog, and it didn't find any birds, and they named Ghost Train the winner. And we got to know the Frucci's and bred that female to Ghost Train and placed it in Puppy Classic, I guess it was, out in Marionville, and got hooked on it after that.
Yeah, that's it. It's like you jumped in with both feet right away, didn't you? You're going from Iowa or southern Iowa all the way to Gladwin, and then even went out to Marionville for the Puppy Classic. That's pretty awesome. So you had, I know that the Frucci's had a huge impact on you, young in your field trial career. Give me some stories there from the Frucci's.
Well, I worked with Wayne's dad, Art, more than I did Wayne or at that time Tom. And Art and his wife stopped. We lived in a little cabin up by Ely, and when we moved back to Minnesota, and they stopped to visit, and I used to go out and work dogs with Art and pick his brain all the time. And then I actually met Wayne's grandfather, who won grouse field trials back in the 40s. And George and Art used to take dogs down to Maytag Plantation in Alabama way back then, and work them in the wintertime. So probably one of the best memories of the Frucci interactions was taking Tom over to his great-grandfather's when he won a placement up at Gladwin, and telling his great-grandfather about it. And great-grandfather would talk, and then he'd swing his arms like he was shooting a shotgun, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's fun. Hey, Cal, just above your head, we see a picture of a setter there. Point to that one for everybody. You know which one I'm talking about, maybe? There's a picture up there, a dog named the Pathfinder. Tell me about that dog, Jim. That was your first champion, if I remember right?
Yeah. After I'd been to Gladwin for a year or so, I saw Ralph Warrington run a dog named The Rock's Return, and he was a big, handsome dog. And I asked if I could buy a puppy, and I got in a hurry and went over there, bought it when it was 5 weeks old. And he was kind of an outlaw, real good-looking dog. That was before shock collars. So I tried everything to get him to go with me, and shot quite a few birds over him. And lo and behold, I got him qualified, and they named him winner of the Lake States Grouse Championship in 1975.
Wow. Yeah, I remember looking through old American fields from like in the 60s, and it would have been, The Rock was a really big winner at the time and won a lot of field trials in Michigan and probably elsewhere. But and then I remember hearing about, Pat, and then you look at those pedigrees, it's pretty cool. But he was a really good looking dog. Even he had to have been a pretty exciting dog to kind of get started with.
But you're really lagging.
I am.
He was a breed on kind of dog too. He produced pretty well,
Yeah.
and you'll see him in a lot of older pedigrees.
Yeah, you sure do. So as you went forward, some of those dogs that you bred, you won the Grand National, if I remember right, 4 times,
Yeah.
or was it 5?
So 4 times in the 80s, and won 5 Lake States and 5 Frucci Classics.
Wow.
And some had futurity placements. But
Lots of futurity placements.
We bred a Pathfinder to Grouse Ridge Foxy, a dog that I got from Pete Flanagan. And that was a good nick, produced really well. Heartbreaker was a super dog.
Right.
She won. Back then, they only had 3 trials out in Michigan in the fall. And she won the Frucci, the Lake States, and the Grand National. And prior to that, she had 9 first place Derby wins. And
yeah, I don't think a lot of people. Well, of course, this is a long time ago, but I don't think a lot of people here talk about Heartbreaker much. To me, I thought she was one of the better looking dogs that setters. She is gorgeous. That's Heartbreaker right there, and it's not real easy for people to see, but back there behind her is being backed by another great winner. You had Country Memory, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great picture. I always enjoyed that one.
That's up north of Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Ericsdale Community Pasture.
Okay.
So we worked up there on foot at that time, and tried to get dogs into wild birds as much as we could, and then we come back and put them in the grouse woods.
A theme that we've had on our interviews in the past have been, about guys going to the prairie. We're going to bounce around a little bit, and this conversation could go on for hours just because Jim's a great storyteller and has so much experience. But how many years have you been coming to the prairies, whether it was North Dakota, South Dakota, or Canada?
That was in the 80s.
Okay.
Early 80s.
Yep.
So I guess that's when we started. And in my opinion, the dogs that I had seen were getting short and didn't have a lot of pattern. So one of my thoughts was that if we went out there, kind of hustled them along, that we could get them to run more forward. And the other thing was the wild birds. I broke all those dogs in wild birds. I had a few pigeons for the puppies, but I never had any other planted birds during that period of time.
Let's talk a little bit about the dogs that won the Grand National. First one was the first one Heartbreaker?
Heartbreaker, yeah.
And then after that,
might have been Spring Garden Keeper.
And that was that in like 1990, something like that?
I thought it was earlier than that.
Might have been, yeah.
And Stokely's Diablo Jake, who was real young, and Skyline Patty, who was a really nice dog. That was kind of an odd year. She, in my opinion, she hadn't had a real good first hour, but they called back, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 dogs, and it snowed overnight. And I guess there were probably 5-6 inches of snow. And she ran in the last brace of the callbacks, and the snow started to melt. She pointed a grouse, so it was quite a ways out, but it was right out in the open. It flew away, and they said, pick her up. That was it.
Was that at Gladwin or Marionville?
That was at Gladwin.
Okay, I thought so. Hey, Cal?
You're still cutting out on me.
Am I?
I don't know what to do.
Okay, you're fine. If you can hear me, it's your turn to ask Grandpa a question.
Okay. What was your best run? It could be shooting or all age. Just what was your best run for a dog?
For a dog ever? Best qualifying run, you mean? Or
best performance ever you had?
Oh, boy, let me think. I think it was Northern Dancer at the Lake States. He was, in my opinion, a super classy dog. Bill saw him, smooth gaited, and at that time there were a lot of short coupled kind of snappy dogs. So at first they didn't like him because they thought he was a horseback dog because he was different gated. He was also a really intelligent dog. And I worked one day with Glenn Poor and Jim Sorrells, and this dog's call name was War, and War had 3 fines, and then he knocked a bird and chased it. And I got on him, and he pouted, and he wouldn't point a bird or do anything. So I put him in the kennel for 2 weeks. We went to the Lake States, and he ran the last race, and it was kind of overcast and kind of almost eerie because it was so quiet. And you could hear him just run to the front, the bells going, and he got into a cutting and he stopped. The bell just punk, stopped, and we went in there, and then everybody could hear the grouse flush. And we got out, and it was kind of like a line at the end of the funeral or something, where everybody wanted to shake hands, and they thought it was really exciting and fun.
Cal, I'll tell you that, and everybody else, I've asked that question. The question I end up asking a lot to people, and not just on this show, but sitting on tailgates at field trials around the country, about the best performance they ever saw that someone else ran. And I would say 80% of the time, that's the one that gets mentioned. So, yeah, that is not. That's I was hoping it was going to be the one you said, but even if it wasn't, I was going to tell you this is the story I hear quite often. You know, I judged out there in Michigan a couple of years ago, and we had kind of got into those conversations, and I've talked to people online. I've asked people for close to 20 years that same question, and I hear it all. I hear it very, very it's very constant how often that one gets brought up. So that nice. Was pretty special. Special. I don't know. I'm going to do it because I think everybody needs to see it. But this is War right here. He was a tremendous animal and just a personable dog. Jim said he's smart, and you could surely see that by being around him. He produced some really nice dogs. He was a dog that won late in life. He won the runner-up at the Minnesota Grouse Championship. He was got to be, 8 or 9 years old, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just a great bird dog, obviously, and beautiful. He was, in case anybody was wondering, right, he was out of Pork Roll, Dr. Nitchman's great champion. And that kind of lends me to ask you the question. Give me some stories about Dr. Nitchman. I know you spent some time with Doc and in North Dakota and probably elsewhere. I would have to imagine that.
I'm probably going to have to hear.
I enjoyed Doc. He was kind of a curmudgeon, but he was always fun to visit with. And I had Jim Rogers and Dale Browning, I think, down at Doc's place in Alabama, and he was telling stories about. He was trying to think of stories about old setters, and Carol Lee would kind of butt in and say something about what my kids are doing, and these guys are just craving for those setter stories. So they wanted to hear them, and then we worked with him out in Max Bass, North Dakota. I was pretty impressed. He was, I think, in his 80s then, and we ran dogs up north of there, and they were back at his camp in the morning, and he asked what we wanted to do, and I said, I like to road dogs, and then I'm going to go home. So he comes out, he's on his horse, he's got 3 dogs in roadie harnesses, and he opened every gate we came to.
Oh, wow. So what dogs did you see him work out there on the prairie? Or I guess in Alabama for that respect?
Boy, what I remember of him was that his derbies were always really short. And then the next year they'd run. And I asked him about that, how he did that. And he said mostly with his voice. I'm sure it was partly riding behind him and singing to him. But there was a hibiscus, I think, was one that he worked when we were there. but I don't recall all the others. He got a dog named Sam Spur out of country memory and pork roll that I think ended up out in New York. I did some winning.
Tell me about country memory a little bit. That's a dog that was obviously it was before my time, and I heard great stories about country memory when I was in Michigan and talking to people out there. Tell me a little bit about that dog.
That's also an interesting story. I think I bought her from a guy down in Missouri. She was out of Down County, Bucky, and I just read stories about him. He was a New England dog, and I got her, and she was kind of spooky and shy. Probably for the first 6 months, she wouldn't go 20 yards, and then when she got a little older, she got lost somewhere or another, and we found her in a barn about 3 or 4 days later, and then we just kept hunting her, and all of a sudden she decided she was comfortable, and she started to run, and she turned into a super bird dog.
Oh, that's awesome. So as you went through, it would have been sometime, what year would it have been? You were real instrumental in getting the Minnesota Grouse Dog Association started, along with a handful of other guys. Mm-hmm. Give me some background on that.
Well, when I was back in Minnesota, I had to go to Gladwin to go to a grouse trial, and that was 700 miles. And I said, there's got to be places up here where we could host a trial. So it was Jeff Hintz and Ron Watson, Chuck Wingard, and Ford Bell, and I may be missing other people, but we went into the state forestry DNR headquarters in Mora and asked if they had a place where we might run a field trial. And they gave us some maps, and I guess they thought it would be a good idea. So we went out and we looked everything over, and we thought it looked like it might work. So then we got permits and started flagging courses. And then we actually had a pretty good turnout. There was a lot of interest back then. And we'd have work days, and we'd cut brush and open up the courses.
What year was that? You suppose it got started?
About 40 years ago. So
exactly. Yeah. No, it's left a great foundation. It's a club that I think is pretty lively right now. Maybe hopefully growing a little bit. There's a pretty good number of young guys around, young families. I know when I was over there, must have been last spring for the Region 19 Amateur. There was a lot of kids around it. It was great. It was not great weather. So it was nice to see. I mean, that's, to me, and it's really good to see those young kids around, and like Cal, it sounded like we were having a little problem technically with him being able to hear. So we lost him. Hope maybe we'll get him back, but
I think he's going to around here somewhere.
Yeah. So, but he's going to, I hope to get to see him at a trial again here soon. But so as we move our way forward, through the 80s, you obviously had great setters through the years, but you've always had a number of setters and pointers. You ran predominantly in the woods for a long time. Mm-hmm. Have worked your way into working. I think you're still working dogs in the woods some, but mostly the Horseback Shooting Dog Circuit, and then you spend your winters in Georgia. Kind of tell me about some of those pointers that we had. Say we got back into the 90s, right? We got Brooks LHU Ranger, Peerless LHU Jake, and a few of those. Give me some great stories about some of those dogs.
Yeah, they were snakefoot dogs, and not everybody likes snakefoot dogs, I guess, but these guys were, especially Ranger when he was younger, was a real fancy running dog, and kind of, I guess, what I would say more of a field trial dog than just a quartering kind of dog. He'd run to the limits, and I was kind of like that. And
yeah, yes, you did.
So that we had fun, and Jake was a little more blue collar. I bought him from a guy in Missouri, I believe it was, when he was older, and he turned into a really good bird dog. He was a little trashy if he got on a deer or some livestock. He might lose him, but he was a good bird dog, and he ended up being a house dog. Kathy liked him, and we we had him in the house for a long time. They were, I would say they were, by standards of over 50 years, they were good dogs. They weren't the greatest dogs they had, but they were good dogs.
Yep. And you got Ranger got runner up at the Invitational one year, if I remember right.
And he won the Invitational.
Oh, he won the Invitational. Okay. Okay. Well, there you go.
He won Wisconsin.
Won the Wisconsin with the big entry, 60 some dogs, maybe.
I think so.
Yep. Yeah. He did a great job there that week. I'm trying to think of some other dogs you won championships with. Moxon Wood Butch was one that, went all the way out to Maine and won a championship with for Earl Johnson. That was kind of an interesting story.
I just saw him at a spring field trial, and I said, Earl, you ought to field trial that dog. So he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, we'll work him and see what he does. And I took him out there, and he did a pretty good job. So that was like a 6-month deal that worked out well for everybody.
Yeah, I remember we were up. We spent some time in the woods just before you went out there with that dog, and you called me when you were from out there and said, and we hunted him, we shot birds over him, we did all kinds of stuff, and you called me from Maine and said, Billy, I won the championship. I said,
New England, yeah.
They won the New England. I thought, and I guessed a different dog at the time, and he said, no, it was Butch. I said, oh my gosh, that was exciting. It was one of those things where it probably was one of the earlier times that I remember, realizing that a dog could have not the greatest workout the day before they go to a field trial and then go out and win a nice field trial. It was kind of fun to see, something I learned. So yeah, that was fun. So all of this time, right? You were working full time.
Yeah.
With the U.S. Forest Service.
That's correct.
And we know that dog trainers work hard, right? They work long hours. They spend times away from their family. What you did, you had 3 great kids. You spent time, you worked a full-time job, and then worked dogs around that and field trialed around it, for, I don't know, I guess you could say how many years it was, but for quite a long time before you were able to retire and do this full time.
Yeah. I had 14 shooting dogs at one time and worked full time and took all my annual leave and whatever time I could get my working comp to go to the trials in the fall. So we took kids out there and they did homework in the travel trailer or motel, wherever we were. And now you go to jail if you did that, I guess, but it didn't hurt them at all. They're all good students and have successful lives. Well,
I've said this many times that my kids are way better off for the time that they spent traveling around to go into field trials. We told them all around, and I hear, you hear that, right? A lot of times, well, it's hard to go to field trials. I got young kids and it can be done and it's great for them. And that's, those are the things we just need to try to keep, getting out there to let's just keep trying it and get people to come and bring the kids and bring the families. And it is hard. We understand that, but it's surely worth it over the long run.
They learned to work. They all had chores, and that was a good thing. I think that's missing in a lot of families nowadays. The young kids don't have chores every day.
Yep. Just a little sidebar you find interesting. Billy, my youngest, he's got a summer job fighting wildfires in Buffalo, Wyoming this summer.
Oh, cool.
So something you've spent some time doing over the years. So
I did. Yeah, that's great. That's a good good job for summer.
Yeah. No, he graduated last December and started graduate school right away, and so he's fighting wildfires was high on his list. So he's following your footsteps a little bit. We'll see where he ends up after that. But
Good deal. Good.
yeah, he's out there getting excited. He's trying to figure out how to catch a trout, and I think he actually starts work next Monday. So he's been out there for a couple weeks. But so then at whatever year it was, you were able to retire and do this full time. 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
Where does that time go? And I should probably just speak a little bit of just some of the things that I saw in just pure toughness for years. And I don't know how many years you fought the sore feet, before you finally had that surgery, but never ever slowed down. I mean, I'd go out, I'd leave Duluth and try to get there about the time you could get off work, and we'd go out and run dogs in the woods, and he could outwalk me very easily at the time with feet that most of us probably wouldn't even want to step on the ground, and that was it was pretty impressive, just pure toughness and love for what you were doing and knowing that you had to get the work done. So then once you retired, you always had horses. I know that. And, but you started moving a little bit more to the horseback field trial side, where you were still running some grouse dogs if you had the right dogs. And then you were, working dogs on the prairie, spending more time on the prairie than you were able to, obviously, when you were working full time, and developed, some pretty good horseback dogs. I guess one dog that I do want to bring, and walking dogs, I want to bring up one that when we're bringing up those dogs that came up through the pointers and later, was Hawthorne Kate. Obviously, Kate was a dog that was probably one of your better dogs over the years, I would guess. You would say
she was. Yeah, she had 24 wins. She won. At Freddie Rail's place by Mobridge.
Yeah, she won. She won all over the place. You broke up there a little bit. I don't know if everybody else could hear it. It froze for me, but I remember she got runner up at the U.S. Complete National Championship at Holly Springs, Mississippi. She won in the woods. She won all over the place. She was really a good one. Oh. Let's take a look here, Jim. I can't hear you right now. You're kind of froze up there. We're going to do this and come back, see if we can get you back here. Let's try this. Okay, Jim, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but if you can, we need to just kind of restart your browser real quick. We got a little bit of a glitch. Maybe give it a try. I hope this will work. If not, hopefully Jim makes it back. As everybody can tell, there's a lot of history here, and we'd like to get as much of it as we can. I mean, Jim's been around the game for a long time. I felt lucky to learn a lot from him over the years, and this has been something that I've been wanting to do, is get Jim on here and talk. So hopefully he can come get back in here. It's great to have Cal with us too at the same time. One thing I would like to mention, I guess, I see that we're kind of starting to, in some parts of the country, we're starting to work a little bit out of this COVID-19 situation. I see the Minnesota Grouse Dog Association's plan on trying to run a field trial in June. Give it a chance to get. There's a youth event planned with it, as well as regular stakes. I'm sure it'll be doing everything we can to keep some safe social distancing at the same time, but still have having a field trial. So we're a sport that's kind of built around social distancing to begin with, and this is going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully, and I see there was some trials out, in the Northwest last week, and one thing I'd like for everybody to do, if you're having a trial or you see one coming up, make sure you get it out there and share it with us on Field Trial Central so we can talk about it a little bit. And I really like to get the some focus on some of those events as they're coming on. So if anybody else has any questions, if you guys that are watching want to pop anything in there that I can help with or I can answer, I will. I'll do that, and maybe we'll get Jim back on here in a little bit. The other thing I guess I would say is that we're working our way towards that summer season. You're starting to see a lot of the advertisements out there for the guys coming up north. There's, I think everybody, as far as I can tell, trainers are still planning on coming to the Dakotas. Hopefully all the trials are still going to happen in the Dakota, on the prairie. But either way, a lot of these guys are going to get a lot of work done. If you're looking for someone to send a dog with, and you have any questions, or you're new to the game and you have different thoughts, and feel free to reach out to me. If I can answer any questions, I will. I've met I'm not going to say every trainer that comes to the prairie, but I've met a lot of them. I've seen the work that they do, and I surely would be more than willing to answer any questions people have about why they should send a dog or where they should send it. And I, there's very few, if any, that I would steer anybody away from, to be honest with you, but I could surely give you good reasons to do it. So, besides that, I was trying to think, there's, I don't have a lot more on that summertime stuff, but I've been getting some great feedback on the interviews, getting a lot of suggestions, and I'm always up for more. I see Jamie Daniels is online watching tonight, and Jamie obviously is on my list of guys to get, to get in here and talk about his field trial career, his field trial string, what his plans are for the future. We're looking to get more grouse trial guys, some more walking trials, as well as some of the shooting dog guys. As people probably saw a couple weeks ago, the top shooting dog of the year award concluded. Top dog of the year, I think, was announced for sure as Chelsea Thunderbolt for Sean Kinkler, as well as the owners, Dr. Tom Jackson and George Hickok. So that's the third time that dog's won that. That's the only other dog that has won it 3 times is Elihu Swami, Hall of Famer. Obviously, Bolt, I would say, is headed for the Hall of Fame. He's won 21 Open Shooting Dog Championships. Nobody's ever done that before. So I think a Hall of Fame career is pretty eminent there. We're starting to see some Bolt pups out there that are doing some winning. So I look forward to seeing how that production record grows. I don't have a whole lot more tonight. I'm not going to do I guess one thing I would, as long as we're on here and I'm doing this as a solo event right now, I'd like to get some input from people if they would be interested as the field trial season gets started. What I'm thinking I'd like to be able to do is come on once a week, maybe it's a Sunday evening broadcast, and just talk about what's happened in a solo event, just what's happened in the week in field trials, right? Go through the championships or the major field trials that have happened, whether they be shooting dog, all age, grouse trials, walking trials, major breed trials, and the dogs that have won and the people that handled them. Just kind of a quick newscast, a little bit of blurb of what's coming up and what we can look forward to. If people would be interested in that, please let me know. I think that it would be a lot of fun to do it. And when, I hope to still do at least one interview show once a week with 1 or 2 different people that can come on and we can talk about the stuff that's real pertinent to what's just happened, as well as, the past and what's been coming up. There's going to, by the time we get that far, we'll have a lot of the trainers in, and there's still a lot more to do. I do see Terry Knight brings up National Shoot to Retrieve. I would surely be willing to talk more about the NASTRA trials. I have not been to a NASTRA trial in a lot of years. I think there's a lot of really good dogs there, and I think it's a great entry point for field trials. I think that's something that we could do also. So we'll put that on, and it's kind of been on my list already, and we just need to kind of work that in as we go, because I think anything to me that people can do with their dog is awesome. And whether it's shoot to retrieve, and I obviously I've always lended towards more the field trial side, whether it's and mostly FDSB, but we can talk to some top AKC handlers. We can talk to some shoot to retrieve handlers. If the day will probably come where we'll talk to some guys that are into NAVDA, and doing that type of stuff. Although the show will likely mostly lend towards major circuit field trials, whether they be Grouse Trials, walking trials, horseback shooting dog, or all age. But I want to talk about all of them. I love bird dogs. People that are watching this, people that are following these are people that like bird dogs generally as much or more than I do. So that would be a great plan. Any other ideas that people have, please feel free to reach out to me. Probably the best place to do it, obviously, is on Facebook or on YouTube. Make a comment. I will try to get back. I try to answer every one of those comments, and every one of, whether they're a private message or they come over on the on the Facebook chat. So here's a little comment here from Justin Boring. Probably butchered your name, but this is very interesting. Only been trialing 3 or 4 years, and do mainly AKC and a couple of do sanctioned trials with the American field. Thanks. I'm glad that you found them informative as well as interesting. I have too. I think it's a lot of fun. Justin, where do you field trial at? Give us a little feedback on where you're running dogs, and it'd be interesting to hear that. Anybody else have any other questions? I'd be willing to try to answer them if somebody's watching online. Jack Glover, that's a great question. I'd like to hear about the horses used at trials, sources, breeds, training, etc. Well, I can surely touch base on a couple of those things. Breeds for sure. They are almost exclusively Tennessee walking horses. We do see quite a few Missouri Foxtrotters, basically all, what we would call gaited horses. Some Foxtrotters, I've seen, some Rocky Mountain horses, a very small number, but some Pasafinos, but the Tennessee walking horses are by far the largest breed out there. As far as sources, they're all over the place. It can be anywhere from there, and most of them are in the South, but there are definitely some in other parts of the country. I do have a person or two that I've had in my mind to talk about horses. Hopefully I will be able to get them on here in the future, because that's one of those things that I'm always interested in talking about. And it's interesting when you talk to people that have been around horses, and especially those breeds for a long time. They study those pedigrees about like we study bird dog pedigrees. They will list off several generations back of horses, and what the what the different traits are, and what happens in and you can kind of how they develop and how they're gated, and how they go back. And that is one thing that's been over my head. And to me, horses are a lot of fun to have, and they're a great tool. But I'm not a horse breeder, and I'm glad there's some great ones out there. One thing I will tell you that almost everybody will tell you is that it takes just as much to feed a good one as it does a bad one. And the good ones won't hurt you. So that's always important. Go out there, and if you have to spend a little extra to get a real good safe horse, it's gated well, then I think it's worth it. Justin's back on in Texas. Oh, great. Yeah, it's a state to me that I've spent a fair number of winters in. Great wild birds. We've had a lot of fun. I wish there were more trials in Texas, as do everybody, I guess. Been to Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, and Arkansas. Yeah, that's perfect. Well, good. Keep going. Enjoy yourself. Bring your friends. Spread the word. Spread the word of these type broadcasts and these shows, and hopefully that you'll find some neighbors down the road that want to jump in and travel with you, do a field trial or two. I think you obviously are finding some fun in it. You will keep going. So Justin says he's going to a trial in Colorado next week, and I'm glad to hear that. I think I did see that somebody in Colorado, I don't remember what club it was, that was holding a field trial. So we got to just keep keeping on. It's a time of the year that there isn't a ton of field trials usually. So a lot of the professional trainers are gathering up their strings, getting ready to head north. They're working puppies. They're breaking derbies in the yard, getting them ready to bring north on wild birds. Kind of what we're doing here myself. Kind of getting everything ready with the use a lot of pigeons this time of year and get ready for July to come around when it's all wild birds and lots of fun. So people may not know where I'm broadcasting out of here is in central North Dakota. Pretty good country for wild birds, mostly sharptails. We got pheasants, we got huns, and that's kind of how I ended up here in North Dakota, looking for that type of place to work bird dogs. And here comes Jim, maybe coming back on. That might be good. Jim, you're back.
Working on it.
Okay, I'll let you get hooked up there, and then we'll get Jim back on and hopefully get some more feedback on what Jim's been seeing over the years and the changes he's been seeing in field trials. I know that Jim's seen a lot of changes. He sees the way things work. Jim, you there?
Yep.
Super.
Trying to get over.
Okay. There you go. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Well, they got to listen to me drone on a little bit, so.
For a certain amount of time and then it quit, and I can't figure out what the settings are to get from.
Can you hear me all right, Jim?
No, I couldn't. You cut out.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Get out of there.
Okay. Now can you hear me, Jim?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Hey, glad you made it back. They had to listen to me talk all by myself for a while. I probably put a few of them to sleep, but we were just talking about field trialing and kind of stuff that's going on around the country. I know, Jim, you've seen a lot of changes in the dogs over the years, and I think it's cyclical. I think it kind of they change. We've had this discussion a lot over the years about how the dogs that win kind of change over the years, but some of it's just due to who is judging at the time and what performances are winning, and then the new people that come at the time that those performances are winning find that the type of dog they like. I know we've had that discussion before, but what changes have you seen in field trials over the last 50 years?
Well, I guess I can tell you more about changes in grouse dogs because there was an evolution in my mind. When I first went there, there really wasn't any cover or habitat. The dogs ran huge, so most of the dogs ran off. There weren't many dogs. If there were 12 dogs, probably 7 or 8 of them ran off, and that started to change a bit. Doc Steitler won with Pleasant Valley Clyde and Liz, and they were really good dogs, I think. And then may have been with the advent of shock collars, variable intensity collars anyway. they started to have dogs that were a lot shorter, and also the cover was better, but the dogs were a bit more mechanical, probably too mechanical for me. Uh, and then it's probably oh gosh, I don't know, earlier than I started to win some with, but they were real snappy, attractive, but short, and that changed some. And last time I judged the Grand National, there were a lot of dogs that were kind of out and back, didn't run strong forward races, and there wasn't as much concerned about the way they finished. I didn't think. They're good dogs. They're all good dogs. I mean, they're phenomenal bird dogs, and I think shooting dogs started to run quite a lot more, and all age dogs started to run less. When I was first around Solon Springs, the all age dogs were really home run hitters, and they were big going dogs. And they lost quite a few of them, but you don't see that too much anymore. It's not that they don't run, but they're just not. They handle better, I guess, and that's probably understandable. But there's phenomenal all age dogs right now, and shooting dogs. And it's tough to compete. They're really good.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I kind of thought those might have been what you were going to talk about, changes in the grouse dog side. Now you did mention the last time you judged the Grand National. You've been a pretty accomplished judge, judging all over the country. Judged. Tell me about some of those big trials that you've judged, and the dogs that you saw, whether they were the winners or maybe close to the winners. Give me a couple of those performances and places that you've judged at.
Well, I think I've judged over 40 championships now, or maybe that includes national qualifiers, but actually one of the standouts that I was going to mention that I didn't judge was Elhu Swami out at Sean's trial.
Yes.
Just amazing. Had 5 fines and ran to the front the whole time. As far as dogs that I've judged, Beaver Meadow Bet did a good job when she won the Grand National. Autumn Moon did a good job when he won that. Let me think. Judged the Prairie Chicken Shooting Dog Championship 4 times, amateur once, and saw some good performances. That's a really hard place to run a dog. It's challenging, and you know that. You and I placed in it one year.
Yep.
But boy, I'm gonna mention one more thing. I judged or placed dogs on 8 different wild bird species, and judged on I think 6 or 7.
Wow.
It's I feel like that was an honor to do that, and there's a whole lot of good dogs, really good dogs. It's amazing. We judged the black belt this year, and there were, I think, 6 dogs that were with multiple fines and super races, and you had to pick them out.
Oh yeah, that's fun when you got to, when there's not just 2 of them. You just, it's fun when it makes it a little tougher, but it's way more interesting.
It is. Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt that anybody that knows you or yourself would say anything other than you're definitely a wild bird guy.
Yep.
And that's what's been the most important to you in your career as far as when it comes to birds. Tell me why you think wild birds are so important to bird dogs.
Well, I don't know if they're important to bird dogs. They're important to me. I really don't like chasing planted birds around.
Yeah.
But I've been fortunate, really fortunate, to be able to work wild birds when they're at the peak of their cycles or populations. So I'm right now down in Georgia. Their quail are doing really well, and I've been places down there where you move 50 coveys in half a day. It's and they're wild birds. They're not. People will tell you they're release birds, but they're not. They're wild birds. And
Yep.
back in the 80s, we had all kinds of grouse. We'd go out in the evenings and have enough grouse work to get all those dogs work. Been on the prairie a number of times when they were really plentiful. Last year was actually really good for me, not for everyone, I guess, but we had lots of chickens and pheasants.
Yeah. There's a comment here I'm going to throw up, and this has been said many, many times from New England to Minnesota. Chopper gave us a comment. Greatest showman in the woods. If you can't learn something watching Jim Tande handle a grouse dog, you're not paying attention.
Thank you.
Jim is. I remember one time, maybe I saw it for a lot of years, but I didn't always know what I was seeing either. I mean, I was pretty green, but I learned a lot. But I remember Mark Adams, field trialer dentist from Michigan that spent a lot of time in the grouse woods, and that was, and Jim and Mark sent dogs to Jim to be worked, and that was the reason. Jim could show a dog better than anybody when it came to turning one loose in the woods. So and if any of that rubbed off on me, and I know it's rubbed off a little on Davey, I would feel lucky. So that was thanks for pointing that out. I may have brought that up, but I surely wouldn't want to have missed it. So thanks, David. So now as you go forward, what are you doing these days for the most part? Obviously, you're working dogs on wild birds in Georgia. You come back up here, you fish all summer, and then you work dogs on wild birds out here. I think last year I remember hearing you had a lot of young dogs. Give us a little update on what you're doing today.
Well, I'm having fun. I'm working wild birds, and I'm starting young dogs. I really don't go to a whole lot of field trials, but I think the dogs are as good a quality as I've ever had. We start them down in Georgia in the springtime, as do Ike Todd and Farrell and all those guys. You just go down there in the spring and you can work on wild birds all the time, and they're after hunting season, there's good opportunities. So when they're about a year old or less, they just go out every day and let them knock, shoot the gun when they knock the birds. If they point, that's great. Let the others come in and back, and then do some yard work. I never used to do yard work. I didn't do any back in the day, but I do a fair amount now, and I have some people that help me, a young couple with two little girls come over, and they actually pushed me last year to do more yard work, and I give Molly a couple bucks every time she flushes a pigeon for me, and it's good. So we had I think we broke 6 total of 8 dogs last year, and they're really good quality young dogs. They've all placed in field trials. One was runner-up in the National Amateur Derby Championship, and we sold some to good quality plantations for. I've had a good market for that for several years, and they call and ask what you have, and these are just common bird dogs or hunting dogs. They're dogs that are maybe have some derby wins, and they're good enough to go on with, but they'll pay pretty good money. So that's something I enjoy. The biggest thing I enjoy right now is the dogs.
Yeah.
A lot of the people I've met over the years are just phenomenal, but I saw some people on Facebook complaining about how crooked field trials were today, and my thought was, just do it because you enjoy the dogs. Don't do it because you think you have to win. It's not going to give you a fair shake, but I do enjoy the dogs. I was over this morning. I've got I think 6 or 7 running around the compound, and they jump all over me, and I put them on a bench and stroke them and play with them, and we go out and work pigeons, and every one of them will stand there like $1 million right now, and there's this year's puppies. So,
awesome.
That's fun. It's rewarding, and
yeah, I think you're right on there. I think that's kind of where I've gotten to, of course, in my life, and I think it's a great attitude, and it always has been. Do this for the dogs and for the fun you have, not how important getting a win is. And the wins will come. I mean, if you're enjoying working dogs and you want to go to field trials, I think just go because you enjoy the field trials and you enjoy the dogs. The people are great. I guess that was one thing I was going to bring up with you. There's very few people I've seen that have been able to build as many relationships in this sport and in the bird dog world as you have all over the country. You've got friends all over the country, and that would play into why you've had a pretty good market on selling those dogs on the plantation. Pretty good at building relationships with people. And Dave Moore did bring up something, and this is one we should talk about. Tell us about Scott Chafee and his first championship and your relationship with Scott.
Scott Chafee, he handled Heartbreaker. I asked him if he'd run her. Another guy was going to run her in the National Amateur in Minnesota, and he decided he couldn't do it. So I asked Scott, and he said, "Yeah, I'll run her." And he was an amateur at the time, and it just absolutely poured rain. It was like you had to zip your coat up or run down the inside of your raincoat. And she had 2 really good grouse finds. Well, she must have stood 30 yards back from one of them. And I went in there and flushed, and she hustled around and ran good. And hopefully that got Scott started in his career. And it was fun for me. I enjoyed seeing her, and it was one of the best, unusual, but best performances I'd seen.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that about other great dogs that you saw that other people ran, whether it was in the woods. You mentioned Swami. If I remember right, that it was like when Swami ran, it was super hot too. That was in 90 when Swami ran out the All-American. That was a pretty impressive performance out there. But tell me about some other great performance you saw in the grouse woods that other people ran.
Some of the dogs that stood out to me in the grouse woods were probably Beaver Meadow Bet, Hard Driving Bev. Kingway was the best dog that I saw Dave Hughes run. There was a Rob Frame had a little setter female that I saw do a really good job one time. And old Clyde, back in the day when he'd run like everything, and then you'd find him standing out there. That was impressive. I've seen lots and lots of good horseback shooting dogs and all age dogs. Really impressed with dogs in every venue. I don't really have I'm not partial to any of them. I think there's great grouse dogs, woodcock dogs, shooting dogs, and all age dogs. And I'm excited by a lot of them. I still go back and to any of those venues and get all turned on by a good performance.
Yeah, no, I can surely believe that. Hey, one guy we need to talk about a little bit that it's a friend to everybody around, and been one of your best friends over the years. It's Chuck Wingard. Give me a couple great Chuck stories.
I might be losing you, Billy.
Oh, can you hear me there now?
My battery's going down.
Oh,
Can you?
can
How
still
about
hear
now?
you.
Yep. Can you hear me? Hey, I was just talking about how one of your best friends over the years that's been your one of your closest partners and traveling buddies, Chuck Wingard. Give us some great Chuck stories if you can.
Hang on, Bill.
That's all right. We're here.
Still there?
Yep.
Okay, I couldn't hear your question.
Hey, the question was this: one of your best friends and traveling buddies for a really long time over the years, Chuck Wingard. Chuck gets brought up to me when I go around the country, and people ask me, "Hey, when's the last time you seen Chuck? How's Chuck doing?" Give me some good Chuck Wingard stories.
Well, there's a lot of them. Chuck's a great guy. Everybody likes Chuck. I don't think I've never heard anyone that doesn't like Chuck. He slowed down a lot in the last couple of years. He had some surgery last year, but he's good. He won the National Prairie Chicken Shooting Dog Championship one time, and he was so excited. He gave us I don't know what it was, $100 to go buy food, and we hooped her up all night long. But it was fun. And oh gosh, my kids can tell you more stories than I can. He was like a uncle to him, so that was that's really a neat deal. He still has an interest in dogs, so we had a dog for him a couple of years ago that won some pretty Kirby stakes, and hopefully I can get him another puppy this year.
Good. Yeah, we had just a comment here.
I need to do a shout out to my wife Kathy for all she does to help, and also to my kids. They all did a lot of work to help out, and probably sacrificed a fair amount to help me succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. They were all instrumental and still are everything you were able to do. It was always great to see the kids around. It was great to watch Ben scout, everywhere, Michigan and in in Minnesota and everywhere else. So he worked hard, did everything he could to help you, and obviously everybody was a big part of that team. So that's important. It's important to remember that there's no way we could do this deal by ourselves. It's too involved, and it's especially if we want to have people come along with us. So I'm glad you brought them up. There was what else?
I got to tell you a little story. Last month, the end of April, we had a little field trial up here, and it was we had to keep it under 10 people, so there were 9 people there, and they qualified some dogs. And then LJ Lundstrom brought his son Zeke out. Zeke's 11, so Zeke ran a shooting dog and had 4 fines. The first one, his gun didn't go off, so the other handler was there and they shot. And then the next one, he said, "Could someone please borrow me a gun?" He was very polite. Shot over the dog, brought the gun back, said, "Thank you, sir." And when he got done with his 4th fine, we all clapped and cheered for him. We thought that was really cool. And that I've been to so many trials where there were people that were upset at the end of the trial, or a few are happy, and most of them are upset. And go and see a kid do that well, and that's pretty neat. That's what I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, that brings us into that. What do we need to do to keep this field trial sport growing, moving forward? Obviously, we need to bring the youth in. We've talked about it. We talked about it with Cal. What can we do to encourage that?
Oh, you're mostly cutting out, but I think you're talking about the future of field
Yep.
trials, and that we talked about that at the little meeting out there this spring, and talking about whether to encourage more pros, encourage amateurs, have a bigger amateur stake, various things. And when we got all done talking about it, I think the consensus was that we just need to get more kids involved or more people involved, and probably some weekend events or somewhere where everyone can win. You remember back in the Hawthorne Open days, everybody that went there won something.
Yep.
We didn't. you got a ribbon, or you got a T-shirt, or you got kids all got something, and that doesn't happen too often anymore. People in the southeastern part of the country are doing a really good job of promoting kids field trials. I think it's called the Youth Field Trial Alliance, and Chris Mathan's doing work on that. And I know Darren has, a lot of people are. I think some of the older folks have more fun when the kids are running dogs than they do when they run their own. And that's pretty cool.
Yep. Davey Moore brings up the Puppy Bowl, and when you mentioned Zeke, winning there at the field trial, Zeke's older siblings, were ones that, were able to grab those puppies and take them in and run in the Puppy Bowl along with lots of other kids, including my own. And my, Billy still talks about it today, and he's 22, believe that or not, but he is. So yeah, those things were huge.
I know that meant a lot to you, and that was cool. Yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah,
we'd probably do that again someday. I get relaxed and don't feel like I have any ego and have to go to a big field trial.
Yeah. No, those are good things. Those trials are important, I think, and it's tough. It just seems like it's tough to get field trials in, and a lot of times up here in the North Country, in the spring with weather and everything else. Then this year was super goofy, but those are important weekends. I think they're great family weekends, and I think the more of that we can get, whether it's in North Dakota, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, all the way through the country, I think those are important. I think you're hitting that right on the head. So, you got any other last words you want to share with us, Jim? I think I could talk to you all night long, obviously, but we're not going to keep you here forever. But I'd like to have you on again someday, so I don't want to completely wear out our welcome. But any other last words?
You were mostly broken up, but I don't have any last words. I just think what you're doing is great for the sport, and people really enjoy it, and I think that's wonderful.
Yep, we're having a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun. So everybody, make sure you share this out there with your friends and bird dog friends and potential bird dog friends. And like I've said in the past, if you got any questions, you got any comments, please feel free to share them with me. I'm up for suggestions. We're going to just try to keep these going on. We'll try to make them better all the time. Jim, thank you for coming on tonight. Thanks, Cal, for being there. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad, Cal was able to come on. He had a great question.
Thank you.
And we will talk to y'all later. And this is Bill and Jim signing off.